Okay, we'll start. Ayin Daled, Amid Aleph, Yosef Rav Brunner. It's about 10 lines from the bottom, 9 lines. Okay, we learned in Machlekes if they're trying to make an Eruv, it's not an Eruv, a Shituf for a Mavi. So that means they want to use a public alleyway. Now, they're going to use the public alleyway based on a heter of a lechi or a kaira on the entranceway. So it has 3 walls surrounding, and the entranceway is going to become mutter with a lechi or a kaira. Now, if it would actually have a 4th wall there, a real wall, then we're not discussing that. That would be a heter without this. Now we're discussing that the heter is because of a lechi or a kaira. That heter we learned from Rav. That only works if you have 2 chatzeros with 2 people in it. Shmuel says you only need 1 chatzer and 1 bias. You can already be mater a mavei with just a lechi or a kaira. And Rabbi Yechanan says that even a chatzer or a bias with a churva on the other side. Okay. Yosef Rav Brunner v'Karmela Shmaitzer. Rav Brunner was sitting, and he said over this halacha. I don't know a lot about Rav Brunner, but we're going to see that he was in the generation of Shmuel. So Amalei Rabbi Lazar Bar Beirav, Rabbi Lazar, who was a student in the yeshiva there, says, Amar Shmuel Hachi. Did Shmuel actually say that you can already be mater a mavai, you can allow a mavi to be used with just a lechi or a kaira, even when you only have 1 house and 1 chatzar there? So Amalayan, he says, yeah. He says, Amalei Achvale Ishbizi. Show me where Shmuel is staying. Okay. We would check it out. So Achvele, he shows him Asal Kami de Shmuel. I guess Rabbi Lazar comes in front of Shmuel. Amalei, Amar Marhachi. Did the master say this? That it's mutter with just 1 house, one. It's basically 1 resident. 1 resident, and the mavi could be mutter with just a lechi or a kaira on the front. Amalayin. He says, yeah, that's taka what I hold. Says Vamar Damar, but the master says, he's quoting Shmuel back to himself. He says, Shmuel holds that you hold. Ein lano be'eruvin al klashim mishnaseinu. The only halachas that we have of Eiruvin are what's clear from the Mishnah. In other words, don't deviate from the Mishnayos. The Mishnayos of Eiruvin are the halacha. That's what Shmuel says. What does it say? It says that the alleyway in relationship to the chatzeros is that same relationship of the chatzer, the courtyard, to the houses. Okay. So the expression of the Mishnah is shehamavei lechatzeros, the alleyway to plural courtyards. That's so we only have by Eiruvin Kaloshin Mishnah Seino, we only have the way the Mishnah says, and it says Chatzeris. So Shmuel, you told us that we have to follow the Mishnah exactly, and then you also tell us that it could be 1 Chatzer. Ishtik. Shmuel's quiet. So the Gemara doesn't know what that quiet means. Quiet could mean that he doesn't think that that's a strong question. Quiet could mean that he's stumped. So kibla minei or like kibla minei. Did Shmuel accept the question that Rabbi Lazar posed him? Tashima. So come and listen. Let's try to see what Shmuel's sheet is. Dahu mavua Davidayer be Avis Bar'i. There was a mavli, an alleyway. In the alleyway was living Avis Bar'ihi. I don't know anything about it. Avadle Lechia V'Sharli Shmuel. There was only him living there. He made a lechi. Shmuel says it's fine. Now, how do you know that this was after he heard that? We'll see. We'll see. We'll see that we have a proof. But he made the lechi and that was fine. Also, Rav Anan in Shadia, we're on top of Ayin Dalet in Bezna. Rav Anan came and he threw down after Shmuel passed away. I guess a new Rav shows up and he throws down the lechi. Says this is no good. You can't use this. Amar. So Avas Bari says, Mavua the Dairna Bay Vasina Mishmei the Mashmuel, an alleyway that we lived in and we carried in. Vasina. That means we come in. We carry in the name of Mashmuel, Nesirav Anan Barav Nishtayiman, and Ravanan Barav comes and throws it away from us. This was mutter the whole time. What's going on over here? Okay. Now, it must be Rav Anan, maybe was a student of Rav. And that's what they're saying. Shmuel was matter this for us. So Shma Mina lekibla minei. We see that because what's happening here? Shmuel passed away. And then Rav Anan shows up. The whole time Shmuel was alive, this was mutter. So we see that the whole issue here is a machlekes Rav and Shmuel was matter that you only need one resident there and it's mutter. So Shmuel did not accept the kasha from Rabbi Lazar. The Gemara says, Lav dafka leila memlach kibla. Really, we can say kibla that he did accept it. Vahacha, but over here, see, Avas Bari didn't get the whole heter. He didn't understand what the heter was of Shmuel. This is what we're suggesting. Shmuel was matter for a different reason. He thought it was because he was the only resident there. Turned out that there was really another resident that Avas Bari didn't consider. What was that resident? There was a shul in that mavai. There was a chazan. The chazan is the shamash. Why is the chazan a shamash? I don't know how that goes. Maybe because he looks at chazan, he looks after the needs of the shul. Maybe that's the. I don't know why we call a chazan someone with a good voice. So the chazan, the shamash, would sleep in the shul and eat somewhere else. So there is possibly another resident there. Depends what you go after, if you go after the sleeping or the eating. So the Avas Bari savar makom pita garim. Avas Bari thought that the heter over here must be because I only need one resident. And that's Shmuel's old shita. Really, Shmuel wasn't relying on that because Shmuel heard from Rebbe Lazar that you have to follow the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Chatzeros, that you need more than one resident. And so therefore, really Shmuel holds closer to Rav shita. Maybe Mamish like Rav. Shmuel Atemei Damar Makam Linagar. But Shmuel was relying on his shita that he holds as a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. If you go after where the person eats or where the person sleeps, Shmuel held that chazan, that you can rely on him. So what happened? For whatever reason, after Shmuel passed away, the chazan moved away. So Avas Bari didn't notice that at all, whether it was there or not. That didn't make a difference. So, but for Shmuel, that was the whole heter. We have over here a picture. You see the shul. The shul, and you have the bed over there. That's what they're trying to show you. Okay. Just kidding. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav. Rav Yudah says in the name of Rav. Rav Yudah is a student of Rav. Okay, I see Dr. Stein has the picture. We'll see. We'll come to that. Mavai shetzidei echad Eiruvin Kechavim, v'tzidei echad Yisrael. Have an alleyway where one side is a non-Jewish resident and one side is a Jewish resident. Ein ma'arvin aisai derech halaynes la'atira derech psachim l'mavai. Let's do the picture. Let's see. Okay, here's the alleyway. This is the Mavi right there. On one side is an Ovid Kechavim, is a non-Jew. On the other side is a house. There's Chatzeris first, but then there's the Jewish house. And then there's Jewish houses that are behind this house of a Jew, but those are open to a Rosh Hashanah on the side. He made the Rosh Hashanah like this, so it's an L. So there are windows between this. There's a lot of questions here how to learn this. Like, what's the significant part over here? Is it because it's only windows and not doors? Is it because it's open to the Rosh Hashanah on this side? Whatever the case is, we're going to view. We have different ways of viewing what the problem is. But we're saying that you can't make an Eruv between these houses together with this Jewish person, that they should be able to carry in the Mavi. We're not allowing that. Now, what's the issue? Is it because there's windows, or is it because they're open? And is it? Let's see in the Gemara. There's different options and different ways of looking at this. Whatever the case is, Tzidi Echad is Ovid Kechavim. That's clear. Tzidi Echad is Yisrael. That's clear. Ein ma'arvin derech halaynos. You can't make an Eruv through those windows that you see between the houses of the other two houses. Lahatir derech psachim, to allow them to carry through the doorway into the Mavi. Those people, those two Jewish people, can't carry in this Mavi. Okay. Amalei Abaya le Rav Yosef. Rabbi says to his teacher Rav Yosef, Amar Rav afilu b'chatzer. Did Rav say this, that even if it was a chatzer? In other words, could they make, let's do the picture again. Let's say it wasn't a Mavi. You see, in this picture here, it's a Mavi, it's an alleyway. Let's say it was just a courtyard. Here's the non-Jewish house, and here's the courtyard. And we're not dealing with Shitufei Mavais, we're dealing with Eiruvin. And did Rav say that you can't make an Eruv either? Is it a din in the Mavi? Is it a din in the Eruv? We'll see why this discussion is, what would the difference be? What are we dealing with? Amalei, he says Rav said it, yes. He said it regarding Eiruvin also. He said it regarding a chatzah. The Ilay Amar Mai, he said, what were you thinking while you even asked that question? He says, Hava Mina, this is what I was thinking. Taima the Rav, Mishum de Kasavar, Ein Mavi Niter, Balechi Bekaira, Ad Shia Batim Echatzeres Psuchim Laseichai. If you looked at that, if that picture was really surrounding the Mavi was just one Jew and one non-Jew. So I could have thought that this is a din that Rab has regarding allowing a Mavi that only has one residence. And we're going to ignore the residence of the non-Jew. And this would be Rav Shita, that a Mavi can't be permitted with a Lechi or Kaira unless you have two residents. Well, you need two Chatzeris with two residents. Each one needs two. Yeah, I'm not sure if each one needs two. You need two Chatzeris with two real batas. So, if that's the case, Abaya is answering up a question that you could have asked him that says Vitarti Lamali. So then why does Rav need to tell me the same halacha twice? One time he told me that Ein Mavin Niter Belechi V'Karachi Batam V'Chatzeres P'Suchim L'Seichai. And then another time he tells me that Mavi should see the Yechad Avid Kechavim, see the Yechad Yisrael, that you can't use it. And really it's the same halacha. His halacha about the Jew and the non-Jew is the same halacha as you need to have 2 courtyards and 2 houses opening up into the Mavi. So why does he have to say it twice? No, I could have thought that you do need to say it twice.
About the guy then.
Oh, yeah, that's what he's going to say.
Yeah.
He's going to say, because only one of them wouldn't have told me what's the halacha with the guy. So tell me only the halacha with the guy. That's the Gemara's going to go back and forth. Tzricha, it's necessary. If it would only tell me that one, Havamina, Dira Sev Kchamishmei Dira. Very good, Moshe. I would have said that it wouldn't have told me anything about is a dwelling, a residence of a non-Jew considered a residence. So Kamash Malani has to tell me this one, the Dira Sev Kchamishmei Dira, that the residence of a non-Jew is not considered a residence. Now we have it. We have this halacha now. Now here's the problem. So just say it over here. This would tell me 2 things. It would tell me that the residence of a non-Jew isn't a residence. It would also tell me that I need batim v'chatzeres. Hava mina la yadana batim kama. I wouldn't have known how many houses. How many houses per courtyard? Kamash malan batim train. That I need 2 houses. Over here, it just told me, Tzida Yechad Avkram, Tzida Yechad Yisrael. Do I, mamish, need 2 houses per courtyard, or just do I need Shnei Batim Akal Chatzer? Shnei Chatzer Islamavi. Rashi said before, it means that I need 2 houses per courtyard. Which means a total of 4 houses. So over here, we didn't even mention that there's 2 houses for the non-Jew. We just, at least in the picture, it wasn't like that. It's coming to tell me that the amount of houses, and that's more clear in the other one, in the first statement. Okay. I'm conflicted over here with what's the pshat, based because the picture in Rashi versus Rashi. Okay. Now Abai is talking to Rabbi Yosef. Now that you're telling me that Rav holds that it's not a din in Mavi, that it's a din in Chatzer, time of the Rav. So now what's the reason for Rav? We had a good pshat in this statement. We're saying that it has to do with it. You don't have enough residence to allow the mavi. But if it doesn't have to do with a mavi, if the same thing applies to a chatzah, then what's the pshat in what Rav is saying? So time of the Rav, the kasavar asr lasis yachid b'makam evd. You're not allowed to dwell, lasis over here, it means to make a dwelling place. This Jew is considered living together with a non-Jew, and that you're not allowed to do. Don't say, we hear the expression is asr. What we say, we don't make it easy. That's the way we do it. So therefore, there's 2 possibilities here. I have 2 other Jews that are living in the back. If I allow those other Jews to carry into the Mavi, then I'm making it more comfortable for the Yisrael to live with the guy. Because he's going to feel safer, because he has 2 other Jews that are coming in there regularly. And they can even come in on Shabbos. So therefore they're making it safer. So I have two options here. Either I make it safer for him, or I make it less safe and more uncomfortable and hope that he moves out. Now, I don't know why Rav is saying that we make it unsafe. They could have done it the other way also. But for whatever reason, they're making it less safe. Don't rely on that security that you think that those other Jews that are living behind are going to use the alleyway, come through the windows and go out, and then that's a false sense of security. We don't want to give you that false sense of security. We want you to know that they can't come in at all, and therefore you're living, well, they can come in, but they can't carry in there. And you're living mamish together with a non-Jew, which is dangerous, and you should try to move out. That's what they're dealing with there. So therefore, it's not a din in Mavi, and he doesn't have a residence. This is a din in not living with a non-Jew. So it could even be a chatzar. Rav Yosef then says, I heard him repeating this, and he was saying twice. I didn't know what it was referring to, but now Abaya, that you brought this out, that there's two dinim here. There's a din in a mavoi that doesn't have a residence, and it's not considered that there's two chatzeres because the residence of the non-Jew, it doesn't count. And there's another din of a chatzer that it's also usher. Because why is it usher? Because we don't want you living together with a non-Jew. So that's what he was repeating twice. I would come to tell me those two halachas. Now, what exactly the two halachas are, different gersais. But anyway, the way we said it is possibly the pshat, that it's a din in the mavi and it's a din in the chaser. Okay. We have a new Mishnah. We're lucky we were introduced to this Mishnah before, so we had it a few times quoted. It makes it a little easier on us. The Mishnah has a machlekes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Akiva regarding two courtyards. One courtyard is open to the street, and the other courtyard is open only to the second courtyard. So it's an inner courtyard and an outer courtyard. Let's pull up a picture. Okay, there's a lot going on there in Taisvis, which we didn't discuss. So, okay, this looks complicated. It's actually pretty simple. They put these are houses, right? Houses. This is called Chatzar Pnimis. That's the inner courtyard, and this is called Chatzar Chitzayna. That's the outer courtyard. Now, what we're dealing with here is that there's no exit for the Pnimis other than walking through the Chitzayna. So in the Mishnah, we're going to have cases of if the inner courtyard made an Eruv, but the outer courtyard didn't. If the outer courtyard made an Eruv, but the inner courtyard didn't. If they made Eruv, but someone in the inner one forgot. A whole bunch of different cases. The basic concept here is the walking of the inner courtyard through the outer courtyard is considered, in certain cases, is considered like they also dwell in the outer courtyard, and they should have made an Eruv together with them, in certain cases. And Rabbi Akiva is the one that holds that very strongly, and the Rabbanan hold it less. So it goes like this. You have two courtyards. One is inside the other one. It's behind the other one. Irva hapnimis, like irva chitzayna. The inner one made an Eruv together, they're friends, they put food together. It's considered like one house, and they can all carry in that common area, which is the inner courtyard. But the outer one didn't make an Eruv, so they can't carry. Oh, that's interesting. Only the outer one made an Eruv, so they're carrying together. They want to carry together at least. But the inner one didn't make an Eruv. Shtei masuras. They're both aser. Now the reason for this is the outer one made an Eruv. The reason is because the inner courtyard is considered regel ha'asura, because they themselves don't have an Eruv. When they walk through the outer courtyard, and the walking through is considered some sort of residence, so we have non-Eruv people residing in an area where there's supposed to be an Eruv.
Just a quick question. A quick question. When it says about that they did the Eiruvin the Pnimis, and not the Chitzonos. So when it says that the Pnimis is Muteras, is it Muteras just in their courtyard, or is it Muteras that they can walk into the Chitzonos courtyard as well?
Yeah. They can walk through the Chitzonos courtyard, but they can't carry in the Chitzonos courtyard. So, but their courtyard is muter. They can technically just close the door and say, you're not part of us. You don't walk into here anyway, and they're talking not part of us because they don't walk through the inner one. The outer one doesn't walk through the inner one. So they have nothing to do with the inner one. The inner one is perfectly safe. Okay. But so what we're seeing here is called regel ha'asura. The inner one didn't make an eruv. That makes them called the regel ha'asura. And if they don't make an eruv, so they're gonna aser. They're walking. The regel means the walking through the outer one makes it aser. Irvazulatzma v'zulatzma. This is an interesting case. They made an eruv, each one independently. Each one is mutter on their own. This is called regel hamuteres. The inner one didn't make an eruv with the outer one. So that means that they have residents in the outer courtyard that didn't participate in that eruv. But because they made their own eruv, for some reason, that's regel hamuteres. And regel hamuteres, according to this opinion, doesn't aser the outer courtyard. Okay, in the Gemara, we're going to see that this is the opinion of the Tanakama. However, we're only going to get to that at the end of the Gemara. There's going to be a whole discussion in the Gemara that possibly this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva as well. And then we're going to have a lot of questions on it. And Rabbi Akiva Eiser, Hachitzaina. Rabbi Akiva says the outer one is Aser. Shadrisa Regel Lesarta. Rabbi Akiva says that even Regel Hamuteres makes the outer one Aser because the inner one didn't participate in the outer Eruv. The outer Eruv doesn't have all the participants, all the residents participating in their Eruv. So it's Aser. The Chachamim say that no, it doesn't make it Aser. Doesn't make it Aser. The Gemara has to explain. The Chachamim sounds like the Tanakama. Why do you have to repeat again? That we'll have to see in the Gemara that there's possibly three opinions. There's the Tanakama's opinion, Rabbi Akiva's opinion, the Chachamim's opinion, which is totally lenient. If one of the outer people didn't participate in the Eruv, Haprimis muteres v'chitzon asur. The inner one is going to be muter, but the outer one is asur, as you can imagine. Until they're mevatel rishus. Can they be mevatel rishus? Yeah, because it's a separate Eruv. Min haprimis v'le'eruv. Let's say someone from the inside, from the inner courtyard, didn't participate. Shteim asuras. They're both asur. Why? Now I have regel ha'asura. The inner Eruv doesn't work. So therefore, it asers the outer courtyard as well. Nasnu Eiruvin b'makam echad. Now they're making one Eruv for both courtyards. And they put the Eruv in one place. The Gemara is going to say that, what's the makam echad? The Gemara is going to say that it's in the outer courtyard. That's the makam echad. It's makam echad because that's the place where they both have rights to. So they put it in makam echad. B'shachach echad, and one person forgot. Bein min haprimis, bein min hachitzon v'le'eruv. Doesn't matter which one, whether it's one of the inner ones, one of the outer. It doesn't matter who you blame. Someone forgot to participate in the Eruv. So shtei masuras. Why? We'll see in the Gemara. But basically, the outer courtyard doesn't have an Eruv. Well, we have to go through each one. Is it someone from the if someone from the inside forgot, then it's easy. Why? Because that's regular asura asers that. but they're putting it in the outer courtyard. If in this double courtyard there's only one person living in each, then you don't need an Eruv at all. It's not considered that they're living in the same courtyard. They can still, the outer one can carry in his area, even though there's one person that's walking through, because it would only be a requirement to make an Eruv if the inner one had two people, or if the outer one had two people also. But in order for the regular Asura, the regular Asura is not a full residence. That it means, there's two people living here with the courtyard, you have to make an Eruv. No, the regular Asura is not a full residence. It's just, if it is a full it has its own requirement of an Eruv, then that would become a regel ha'asura and asa. So the regel, rather, is not a real residence. Kiasur Rav Dimi, the Gemara says, when Rav Dimi was a traveler. He came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Amar Rabbi Yana, he brings a halacha from Rabbi Yana, who was in Eretz Yisrael. He says, Zu divri Rabbi Akiva. The whole mission is really Rabbi Akiva. The Amar, afil regel muteres b'mkaima iseres shalai b'mkaima. That he says that even if the inner courtyard is mutter, but they still make the outer courtyard usher. In other words, zula atzma, it's still going to make the outer courtyard usher. The Chachamim say, so far what we heard from Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Kiva is the way we understood it as well. Here's where it gets surprising. The same way that if they made zula atzma, they each made their own Eruv. They said that the outer courtyard is fine, even though they didn't make an Eruv together, because regel muteres is not a iseres. Kach regel asura in iseres. Here's the chiddush. Regel hasura is also doesn't aser, which means that the outer courtyard has an Eruv, and the inner courtyard doesn't have an Eruv. According to the Chachamim, this is Rav Dimi is claiming in the name of Rav Yanai. According to the Chachamim, it's permissible in the outer courtyard. It's a regel ha'asura. The inner courtyard didn't make an Eruv, and they walk through the outer courtyard. That means the outer courtyard doesn't have a full Eruv with all their residents, including the residents of and those are regel ha'asura. Those in their own area, they don't have their own Eruv. It's still mutter in the outer courtyard. The outer courtyard made their Eruv. That we didn't see any shita. We didn't learn any shita like that in the.
So Chachamim are extremely lenient in that case.
Yeah. In the end of the Gemara, what we're going to say is that's the opinion of the Chachamim Maimrim, Ein Drisa Regel Sarta. That's how we're going to learn it. The Gemara doesn't have that clear right now. The Gemara thinks that Chachamim is a Tanakama, and we're going to start questioning back and forth, and it's going to be complicated till we get to this final. Okay, Tanan, we immediately ask a question, Rav Dimi, from the Mishnah. What are you telling me? This is the Shita of the Chachamim, that regular Iseres is mutter. Okay, Tanan, we'll start in the Mishnah. Ir v'chitzayna v'lei pnimius. The outer courtyard made an Eruv, but not the inner one. Shtei masuras. It's asur. Who holds that? Well, Rabbi Kiva holds that, I know. But Mani, who holds that? Ilema Rabbi Akiva. If you say this is the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, my area regular asura, why do you have to tell me that v'laya pnimius? Why do you have to tell me that the pnimius is a regular asura? And that's why shtei masura is regel muteres nami. Even if you're v'zu, it's asur, according to Rabbi Akiva. Elalav must be, you're trying to tell me that this is the opinion of the Rabbanan, that regel asura is asur, but regel muteres is muter. There is no shita of the Rabbanan like that, according to Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi holds that even regel asura is muteres, the way he puts it. That's what the Tanakama holds. That's what the Rabbanan holds. So what are we telling? What are we saying over here? The Gemara answers, Leilam Rabbi Akiva. Really, it is the shita of Rabbi Akiva. V'leizu achsuktani. Why did we have a problem saying it's Rabbi Akiva? Because we had a case that irva chitzayna v'la irva pnimis. The inner one is asur. And we said that that's going to be a problem. So you had a problem with saying that that's Rabbi Akiva's opinion, because Rabbi Akiva should have told me a bigger chiddush, that even if irva pnimis, it's still aser. That's what he holds. So it can't be Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara is saying, it still could be Rabbi Akiva. Just because we started off with the lesser chiddush doesn't mean that he doesn't hold to the bigger chiddush either. We were getting to that. You take it easy. Is lo yizu afsu. Not only this, but if you're patient, you'll see that the mission is going to give us the next case that we're talking about. In other words, our whole problem was just from the diuk, but if you would wait it out, you would see. Okay. Tanan, another question. Irva zulatzma v'zulatzma. If they made an eruv each independently, zumateres b'fnei atzma, each one is mutter on their own. Taima the irva. Why is it mutter on their own? Each one. Why is the outer one mutter? Because the inner one made an eruv. Hola yerva. But if he didn't make an eruv, the inner one, then shtei masurs, they both be aser. V'haitana dama regel muteres in iseres. Regel ha-asura iseres. This opinion obviously holds that there's a difference between regel ha-asura, regel ha-muteres. It's only because irva la'atzma v'irva la'atzma that it's mutter. That means that even though they didn't make an eruv together, and they're walking through the outer courtyard, but it's still acceptable. Even though they didn't make an eruv with the outer courtyard, they made it on their own. Special heter of regel hamuteres. If they made their own eruv, they can still walk through. Mani, who holds this? Ilema Rabbi Akiva. If you say it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, afilu regel hamuteres nami. Then 1 second, an eruv, independent eruv doesn't help. Elalav Rabbanani. It must be the opinion of the Rabbanan. Aha. It's the opinion of the Rabbanan. Then we're seeing that there's a difference between regel hamuteres and regel haasura, which is not like Rav Dimi. V'oid mi the sefer Rabbi Akiva, reisha lav Rabbi Akiva. I have another problem. The first part of the Mishnah is telling me that regel hamuteres doesn't aser, and regel haasura does aser. Then comes along Rabbi Akiva and says everything aser. So we were trying to say that maybe it's Rabbi Akiva's opinion that holds regel hamuteres, that regel hamuteres doesn't aser. We thought maybe we could try to get away with that because, which we can't. But we thought that the first part of the Mishnah, the Tanakama, seemed to say that regel haasura does aser. How does that fit with Rav Dimi? We'd say, well, that's that Rabbi Akiva's opinion that regel haasura asers. But the Tanakama don't even hold of that. He says it's impossible because if the Tanakama comes first, Kama means first, then comes Rabbi Akiva. That means that the first opinion is not Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says, Kula Rabbi Akiva. Actually, it's Rabbi Akiva. This is still an attempt to fit Rav Dimi into the Mishnah without saying that there's 3 opinions. And the Mishnah is missing words. This is how you have to learn it. If they made a separate eruv, this one is mutar on its own, and this one is mutar on its own. Why is the outer one mutar? If it's Rabbi Akiva, regel hamuteres is iser. They didn't make an eruv together. It says bamedvar mamurim. We have to add words into the Mishnah. When do we say this? That it's mutar. Where they made a small wall. So they're separated. A small entrance. A small wall. They locked them out. They locked them in, rather. If the outer courtyard locked the inner courtyard in, so then they're not walking through. So that's why it's mutar. And that's even Rabbi Akiva would agree to that. Div Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva because the walking through it, no matter if it's regular muteres or regular asura, is always asur.
Isn't that contradicting the whole scenario? Because we're saying that pnimis does not have an exit.
Right.
So if that, I mean, what? So
now they're locked in for Shabbos.
Yeah, that just sounds like a very awkward situation that the Pnimis would even agree to that and not break through.
Right.
I mean,
The whole thing is a dialectic.
I don't know.
The whole thing is a dialectic.
Moshe, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Well, you told it to me earlier, so I was just.
Chachamim say that it never asks. Even if the outer one made an Eruv, but the inner one didn't, the outer one is still mutter. This is all trying to fit with Rav Dimi. Masav Rav Bibi Barabaya. Rav Bibi Barabaya has a question. Last time we had Rav Bibi Barabaya, we probably had him in Shabbos, but if you remember in Brachas, he was the one that tried this thing with the chicken, with some sort of superstition or something. He got hurt from it. He has a question here. He says, if it's Yechidim, you don't have to make an Eruv. That means if it's one person in each of the courtyards. Hashal Rabim, but if there is more than one, Shrichim La'arev, then you do need an Eruv. Alma, what do we see from that? Regala muteres bim kaima einay seres, regala surei seres. That means if there were two people in the inner courtyard, they would have answered the outer courtyard, even according to the Chacham. Va'oid, Masav Ravina has a question. Shachach echan min hachitzaina. V'layirev, if one of the outer courtyard didn't make an Eruv, hapnimis muteres v'chitzaina asura. Okay. Then the inner courtyard can still carry, but the outer one can't. If one of the inner courtyard didn't make an Eruv, Shteyim Asur, then they're both Asur. Taima de Shachach. What's the reason why they're both Asur? Because they didn't make the Eruv. Halai Shachach. But if they made the proper Eruv, Shteyim Mutaris, they both be Mutar. Alma Regala Mutaris, Einay Seres, Regala Surei Seres. They have two Eruvin. And we're making a distinction if the inner Eruv is functioning or not. If the inner Eruv is functioning, then the outer Eruv is good also. If the inner Eruv is not functioning, someone didn't participate, so then the outer Eruv becomes Asur. That means that there is a distinction between Regala Asur, Regala Muteres. According to Rav Dimi, it's either Asur or Mutter in regardless of the inner Eruv. In other words, according to Rabbi Akiva, even if the inner Eruv is functioning, the outer Eruv is always Asur, because you didn't make an Eruv together. You had to make the Eruv together. If you didn't do it together, it doesn't work. Why? Because they're walking through the outer one, and not all the residents now of the outer one participated in the Eruv. And according to the Rabbanan, the way Rav Dimi learns, even if the inner Eruv is not functioning, but the outer Eruv is good, so then the outer Eruv is good. Because even Regal HaAsura doesn't Isur. That's Rav Dimi's opinion of the Rabban. And here we're saying that there's a distinction. Elaki Asur Ravin, Rav Yanai. Ravin came later, I think, than Rav Dimi. And he said it over differently. And as Rav Dimi and Ravin were travelers. When Ravin came, he said, Gimel Machlekes B'davar, there's three opinions. Tanakama sav regular muteres inay seres regular surei seres. Tanakama holds that there's a distinction. Is the inner Eruv good or not? This is how we learned it. If the inner Eruv is good, then the outer Eruv is also good, even though they didn't make an Eruv together. If the inner Eruv isn't good, then or there was no Eruv, then the outer courtyard is Asur also. Even if they have a good Eruv, it still doesn't work, because Regel HaAsura, the trespassing of the inner courtyard through the outer one, when they didn't have an Eruv, makes the outer one Asur. Rabbi Kiva Savrafil Regel Muteres Eiseres. Rabbi Kiva holds that even if they have two functioning Eruvin, but because they're not joined together, the outer one becomes Asur because they're walking through. Even though it's Regel Muteres in their own area, they're fine. Rabbana Basrei Savrik Shems Regel Muteres. And the Rabbanan Basrai, that opinion that we didn't know how to explain, we didn't know what they were doing there at all, because we already said that they are even more lenient than the Tanakama, and they hold that even if there's no inner Eruv, the outer Eruv is still good. Regel HaAsura doesn't Asur the trespassing of the inner courtyard doesn't make the outer courtyard also. Okay. Now we go to the next case. It's Nasnan Eiruvin Makam Echad v'Shachar Echad Bein Min HaPnimis Chulu. My Makam Echad. If they made one Eruv and they put it in one place and someone forgot. So we have to go through this. But first we have to figure out which place did they put it. So Simen Chitzaina Atzma Beis Yechida Ravina Adla Mishkach Chafim. Okay. I don't know what the explanation for the Simen is, but Chitzaina. I guess it's a bunch of the cases that are going to follow. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Chitzaina. When it says Makam Echad, it's referring to the outer courtyard. My Makam Echad. Why is it called Makam Echad? Because it's Makam Amichad L'Shteim. It's a place where both of them have access to. If it would have been the inner courtyard, then it would have been only half of the people. Makam Echad means they both have access. That's the one place where they both have access to, because they both walk through the outer courtyard. What's the difference? Where they put the Eruv. Rashi spells this out a little bit. What's happening here is because the Eruv is in the outer courtyard. So if anyone forgets the Eruv, then the whole thing is messed up. Why? If someone from the inner courtyard forgot, so then immediately I have Regel HaAsura is going to answer. Notice the outer courtyard can't say, okay, let's close the door and lock you in, and we still have a good Eruv. None of our people forgot. It's not going to help because it's still Regel HaAsura. You can't say we don't want you here. We're dropping that daka that we had before that they can lock them in. We're dropping that swar. Let's say someone from the outer courtyard forgot. Now this is very logical. The outer courtyard forgot. The inner courtyard still has an Eruv. The only problem is that the Eruv is not in the inner courtyard. So the inner courtyard can never get rid of the outer courtyard without the Eruv being there. If the Eruv would have been in the inner courtyard, then they could have told the outer courtyard, you know what, one of you guys forgot. We don't want you anyway. We're going to close the door. We're going to stay in here, and we'll be able to carry it in our own, at least in our own courtyard. And you didn't participate fully in the Eruv. We don't need you anyway. We have our own Eruv. We're here. I know we have some of the three of you, not all four of you, but we're fine. So that's why it's significant that it's in that the Eruv was placed in the outer courtyard. That affects the validity of the inner courtyard claiming that they have their own Eruv. Okay, Tanya Nami Hachi was also taught in a brisa. By the way, this is today's daf, so we're took us time, but at least we're holding with sort of. Tanya Nami Hachi was also taught in a brisa. Let's say they put the Eruv in out. In others, it's who was the one that said this? This is Rav Yehuda Marav. He's saying that the scenario is that the Eruv was placed in the outer courtyard, one Eruv for both courtyards, and that's why if one person doesn't participate, the whole Eruv is batal, and we have this in a brisa as well. If the Eruv was placed in the outer courtyard, one person forgot to participate, everything is asur, as we explained. Now he's going to spell it out. If the Eruv was placed in the inner courtyard, so then there's a difference. Well, Regel HaAsura. The inner courtyard's Eruv is no good. They asur the outer one as well because of their trespassing through there. If someone from the outer courtyard forgot and didn't participate, so Shteim Asuras de Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva would hold they're both asur. Why? They put the Eruv in the inner one. We have to explain why. We never learned this before. Why is it going to asur? The outer one doesn't walk through the inner one. We're going to explain that because they have access to their Eruv, they actually do walk into the inner one. This is the Rabbi Akiva Shita. That access to the Eruv is going to affect. So even though someone from the outer courtyard forgot, but they have access to the Eruv, they're going to mess it up by walking into the inner courtyard and spoiling the Eruv, even though the inner courtyard Eruv was perfect. The Chacham say no. Over here, the Eruv is placed in the inner courtyard. The outer courtyard has one person that didn't participate. So the inner courtyard can just say, okay, stay in the outer courtyard. Don't come in here. We have a good Eruv. Amar le Rabba Bar Chanan la Abaya. Rabba Bar Chanan asked Abaya, Maishna le Rabbanan damri pnimis miteres mishum da achta ledasha. Umishtamshe. What's the difference between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan? If the inner courtyard has everyone participated and the Eruv is placed there, that they say that the inner courtyard could use it because they say, let's close the door in the outer courtyard, just don't come in here and we'll be fine. The Rabbi Kiva Nami, Tichad Dasha Tishamish. According to Rabbi Kiva, just close the door and the inner courtyard has a good Eruv. We never learned anything about this. Amalei, Eruv Margila. Their Eruv is in there. I know not everyone participated, but their Eruv is in the inner courtyard. And therefore, that gives them access to the inner courtyard. They can't just close the door. So Gemara says, L'Rabbanan Nami Eruv Margila. According to Rabbanan also, there's an Eruv from the outer courtyard that's in there that's going to give them rights to walk in. And that's going to affect the validity of the inner Eruv now. So the Rabbanan say, the Amr L'Takuni Shitaftich V'lei Lavasi. We joined with you to help us. Just drop your Eruv. Like relinquish that Eruv that you just drop it. That Eruv was only made to fix things, not to ruin us. So the Gemara says, well, so that's a good svara. Rabbi Kiva Nami Tema, the Tekuni Shitaftich V'lei Lavasi. We only joined with you to be able to have a good Eruv. Now the joining with you is messing up the Eruv. So drop your Eruv and we have a good Eruv. So the Gemara says Rabbi Akiva holds differently. The Amar Lei Mevatlin Lach Rishusi. According to Rabbi Akiva, there is a solution. And that solution actually messes things up. It works like this. According to Rabbi Akiva, the outer courtyard can say, I know we have rights to walk into your courtyard and that's messing things up, but we don't have to drop our Eruv. We can be mevatel the rights that we have to walk into your courtyard, and therefore you can still carry in your courtyard because we're going to now come in as guests, not as people that have rights to it. How does that mess things up? It messes things up because the inner courtyard has to wait for them to be mevatel rishus, and they can't claim litikune shitaftich v'lei lavasi because it's not really lavasi because we have a way of resolving it. But that way of resolving it is actually a problem for them because until they resolve it, it's us. Now, if there was no solution, then the Eruv becomes nullified. The outer people participation in the Eruv becomes nullified because we only participated to help us. That's if there's no solution. But if there is a solution, then the Eruv is still valid. The validity of the Eruv from the outer people's Eruv is actually ruining the Eruv in the inner courtyard because now they have rights to walk in and their participation is messing things up. So the Gemara asks 1 second, V'Rabbanan, it explains, Ein betel rishos michatz l'chatz. What's the solution Rabbi Kiva gave us? The outer courtyard says that we're giving up our rights to get to our Eruv. Rabbanan hold, you can't give up rights from one rishus to another. Ein betel rishos michatz l'chatz. Ooh, le'mishmol v'Rabbi Yochanan beplukta the Rabbanan v'Rabbi Kiva k'miflagi. We had a machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan was lenient about that, and Shmuel said that it's aser. It's going to come out that the machlekes between Rabbanan and Rabbi Akiva is a machlekes Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. The Shmuel Amar Rabbanan. Shmuel says it ain't mevatlan rishos michatz l'chatz. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yochanan says like Rabbi Akiva. They don't like that. They don't like to be limited. Shmuel would like to be able to say like that both the Rabbanan and Rabbi Kiva would agree with me. And Rabbi Yochanan would like to say that both the Rabbanan and Rabbi Kiva would agree with me. So we have to figure that out. That's the next little piece. Let's try to get through it. Amalach Shmuel would say, another Amri Afilu Rabbi Kiva. I could go with Rabbi Kiva as well. In other words, even though Rabbi Kiva seems to say that Bittul Rishus works, and he doesn't hold of that, Michatzer Lachatzer. Ad kan lekam Rabbi Kiva hachel b'shtei chatzer zul lifnei mizu. Rabbi Kiva is not saying Bittul Rishus Michatzer Lachatzer always works. It works over here because there's two courtyards that are one inside the other one. When I was saying Bittul Rishus Michatzer Lachatzer doesn't work, that was two courtyards side by side, that they had no interaction with one another. The Asrana over here, it's Asrana Dadi. Aval Hasa Mikasin Dadi. Over there was two courtyards that had their own access to the Mavli, and it didn't have a connection. And so therefore I said I can't just be mevatel to participate, get another courtyard to join into my Eruv just because of Bittul Rishus. No, but over here there's an attachment between them. Rabbi Yochanan says over here I could go even according to the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say in Bittul Rishus Michatzer Lachatzer. Ad kan lekem Rabbanan hacha ele da amrulei. Over here, the reason why we're not going to say Bittul Rishus is because they're going to say like this: Adam evatlisly, until I have to wait for you to be mevatel your rishus, to walk into the inner courtyard, ka'asr salai, you're making it asr on me. So therefore, I don't need your bittul. And if I don't need your bittul, then I'll say l'tikune shitaftich. In other words, the Rabbanan hold that the inner courtyard is mutter because they can get rid of the outer courtyard by saying, we don't want your Eruv. What's the problem with the Eruv? They can resolve it by doing a bittul. But meanwhile, you're messing it up. So therefore, the Rabbanan say, normally bittul we would allow bittul. But over here, we're getting rid of the Eruv entirely because of in the interim, you're messing up my Eruv. But in another case, a regular bittul rishus michatzer lachatzer would work, and that's fine. Okay, leave it over here.